2.5 kilometers beneath the surface of the Pacific, there is no light. No sunlight has ever reached this water, not once, in the planet's entire history. The pressure here would crush a submarine like an empty can. It is near freezing. It is black in every direction. By every rule of biology we had ever written, nothing should be able to live here. And then the lights of a small submarine swept across the seafloor and found an oasis. Forests of giant worms, taller than a person, swaying in the current, tipped with blood-red plumes. Clams the size of dinner plates, long beds of mussels, pale crabs picking through the rock. And all of it wrapped in shimmering, heat-blurred water, rising straight out of the lava. An entire world crowded with life in absolute darkness. There was no sun to feed it, there were no plants. There was only a crack in the planet, breathing poison into the deep. And somehow, that was enough. This is the story of the discovery that broke biology in half. The moment we learned that life does not need the sun at all. To understand why that was so shocking, you have to understand the rule it broke. Almost everything alive owes its existence to the sun. A blade of grass catches sunlight and turns it into sugar. A deer eats the grass, a wolf eats the deer. Trace any food chain back far enough, and you arrive at the same place. A leaf, quietly turning light into life. It is called photosynthesis, and it is the engine beneath nearly all life on Earth. But it has a hard limit. Sunlight only reaches a few hundred meters into the ocean before it fades completely to black. Below that lies the largest living space on the planet, and we assumed it was a wasteland. Because down there, the only food is what falls from above. Dead plankton, scraps, waste. A slow, endless snow of the dead, drifting down from the sunlit world. Scientists call it marine snow, and for the deep ocean, it was believed to be the entire economy. So the abyss was supposed to be a place of permanent famine, a few pale scavengers picking at the dead in the cold and the dark, empty, silent. That was the rule. And in 1977, a small team of scientists went looking for something completely unrelated and broke it by accident. The expedition that changed everything was not looking for life at all. In 1977, a group of geologists sailed to a place called the Galapagos Rift, off the coast of South America. They were studying the seafloor where the Earth's crust slowly pulls apart and new rock rises from below. They had a theory about heat. They suspected that seawater was seeping into the cracks in the fresh rock, being superheated by the magma underneath, and erupting back out as hot springs on the ocean floor. No one had ever seen such a thing, so they lowered a camera sled into the dark to look. For hours, the photographs showed the same thing: bare volcanic rock, mile after mile. Then, for just 13 frames out of nearly 3,000, the temperature reading spiked and the lava filled with hundreds of white clams and brown mussels, and then bare rock again. It made no sense. So they decided to send down a person. They had a small submersible named Alvin, a cramped steel sphere barely large enough for 3 people, operated by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Alvin descended for an hour and a half into total darkness. When it reached the bottom and turned on its lights, the scientists pressed to the tiny windows fell silent. The water around the warm springs was shimmering with heat, and everywhere they looked, where there should have been nothing at all, there was an oasis. One of the geologists, Jack Corliss, called up to a graduate student waiting on the ship above. "Isn't the deep ocean supposed to be a desert?" he asked, and then staring out through the porthole. "Well, there are all these animals down here." The oasis at the Galapagos Rift was fed by warm water, gently shimmering up through the cracks. But 2 years later, the full violence behind these vents revealed itself. In 1979, the same submarine, Alvin, moved north to a different undersea ridge, the East Pacific Rise. And there, the scientists found the engine running at full force. The mechanism is almost brutally simple. Cold seawater sinks into the cracks in the young seafloor, drains down toward the magma below, and heats, not to 100 degrees, but to 350 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to melt lead. At the surface, water that hot would instantly flash into steam, but under the crushing pressure of the deep, it cannot boil, so it stays liquid. Searingly hot and loaded with minerals dissolved straight out of the rock. Then it erupts back into the freezing ocean. And the instant that superheated water hits the cold, the minerals crash out of it as a billowing cloud of black particles, pouring upward like smoke from a chimney. The scientists called them black smokers. It is not smoke and it is not fire. It is dissolved metal, turning back into solid rock the moment it touches the sea. That rock builds on itself, layer by layer, into towering chimneys. The tallest ever found, a giant nicknamed Godzilla, rose to the height of a 15-story building before it finally toppled over. Picture it. A spire of black mineral, standing alone on the seafloor, gushing a column of superheated, mineral-choked water up into the eternal night. A wound in the planet, bleeding heat and chemistry into the deep. By every expectation, it should be one of the most hostile places on Earth. Instead, it turned out to be a gathering place. Which leaves the question that puzzled biologists for years. What exactly is feeding all of it? There is no sunlight, there are no plants. And the faint marine snow drifting from above comes nowhere near enough to support a crowd this dense and this alive. The answer rewrote the textbooks. The mineral-rich water pouring out of the vents is loaded with a chemical called hydrogen sulfide. To nearly every animal on Earth, it is a poison. It is the stench of rotten eggs, and in any real quantity, it will kill you. But certain bacteria can do something almost magical with it. They can strip the energy straight out of that chemical and use it to build sugar. The very same job a plant does with sunlight. It is called chemosynthesis, life powered not by light, but by raw chemistry. And it means that in the darkness, those microbes are doing what grass and trees and algae do everywhere else on Earth. They are the foundation of the entire system, turning the planet's chemistry directly into food. Every other creature at the vent, every worm, every crab, every clam, is there to eat those bacteria or to eat whatever does. For all of human history, we had quietly defined life by the sun. We assumed that anywhere in the universe, life would need a star to power it. The vents proved us wrong in our own ocean. A complete, thriving, self-sufficient world running in total darkness on the chemistry of a crack in the earth. And the creatures that evolved to live here are unlike anything else on the planet. Begin with the animal that defines the vents, the giant tube worm. It can grow well over 2 meters long, standing in pale swaying forests tipped with feathery, blood-red plumes, and it is keeping a secret. A fully grown tube worm has no mouth. It has no stomach. It has no gut at all. Instead, its entire body is a living vessel for billions of those chemosynthetic bacteria. The worm absorbs chemicals from the vent water through that red plume and carries them inward to the bacteria. The bacteria in turn feed the worm. Neither one can survive without the other. They are two life forms fused into a single creature, and the tube worm is only the beginning. There is the yeti crab, blind and ghostly pale, which farms colonies of bacteria on the dense hairs of its own arms, grooming and tending them like a crop, then grazing on the garden it grows. There is the Pompeii worm, which builds its home directly on the chimney walls, resting its tail in water hot enough to cook flesh, making it one of the most heat-tolerant animals ever found. There is the scaly foot snail, which plates its body in armor made of iron, the only animal known to build itself a skeleton out of metal. And there are eyeless shrimp swarming the chimneys by the thousands, with a strange light-sensing patch on their backs, perhaps to catch the faint glow given off by the burning hot rock itself. None of them would make sense anywhere else. They are evolution's answer to a question almost nowhere else on Earth even asks. How do you build a living body to survive on poison in total darkness, pressed up against a furnace? The most profound thing about the vents is not how strange their inhabitants are, it is what they suggest about where all of us came from. Consider what a hydrothermal vent offers: heat, liquid water, and a constant, churning supply of the raw chemical ingredients of life pouring straight out of the rock. That is a striking list because it is remarkably close to the conditions many scientists believe were needed to spark life in the first place. For a long time, we imagined life beginning in a warm little pond on the surface of the young Earth. But the early surface was a violent place, bombarded by impacts from space, scorched by radiation, unstable. The deep sea was none of those things. Down at the vents, sheltered and steady, the chemistry that could assemble the first living things would have been running continuously for millions of years. There is one particular kind of vent, a ghostly pale field nicknamed the Lost City, where the reactions are gentler and the conditions look even more promising. A growing number of researchers now suspect that a place like that may have been the cradle, that the first life on Earth was never a child of the sun at all, but a microbe of the deep, gathered around a vent almost 4 billion years ago. If that is true, then the ecosystems we stumbled onto in 1977 are not some bizarre exception to life on Earth. They may be the oldest form of it still living, a faint echo of the way everything began. And that idea transforms where we go looking for life beyond Earth. For decades, our search followed the sunlight. We hunted for warm worlds at just the right distance from their star, where liquid water could pool on the surface. We were looking, essentially, for other Earths. The vents hinted that we might be looking in the wrong place. Because if life does not actually require a sun, if all it truly needs is water, heat, and the chemistry of rock, then some of the most promising real estate in the solar system is hiding in the dark. Consider Europa, a moon of Jupiter. Beneath its cracked shell of ice lies a global ocean, holding more liquid water than every sea on Earth combined. And at the bottom of that ocean, there is very likely warm rock, flexed and heated by the enormous planet overhead. Or consider Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn, which is actively venting plumes of seawater into space. Water that appears to have passed over warm rock, carrying the exact kind of chemistry the vents on Earth run on. These are not warm sunlit planets, they are frozen moons, hundreds of millions of kilometers away. But beneath their ice, in the dark, they may hold the one ingredient we now know life can be built from: a vent, breathing chemistry into a black and silent ocean. We found that recipe on our own seafloor, completely by accident, in 1977. The open question now is whether the very same thing is happening at this very moment under the ice of another world. There is one final turn to this story, and it is not a comfortable one. The same chimneys that may hold the secret of life's beginning are also built of metal: copper, zinc, gold, and silver concentrated into solid ore on the ocean floor. Exactly the kind of metals our modern technology runs on, and people have noticed. There is a serious growing push to mine the deep sea, including the very mineral deposits that hydrothermal vents create. So we find ourselves in a strange and uneasy position. We discovered these ecosystems less than 50 years ago. We still barely understand them. We are finding new vent fields and new species on nearly every expedition that goes down. And we may begin tearing them apart before we have any real idea of what we are destroying. The deep ocean guarded this secret for 4 billion years. We have known about its greatest one for less than a single human lifetime. The ocean keeps its secrets, but this one it allowed us to see. And it changed what we believe life is capable of, that it can take hold on poison in crushing darkness, beside a furnace at the bottom of the world. And that, somewhere out there, under a sky of ice, it may be doing exactly that right now. If this carried you somewhere you have never been, subscribe and come deeper with us. There is so much more down here in the dark, and we have only just begun to look.